Hey, Happy New Year. I'm Oliver the Ricketts, and I watch a ton of movies every year, and they're all new movies too, and that's how the movie theater works. Now, every year, I do sit down and make a top 10 list of all of my favorite movies. But you know, that doesn't leave a lot of room to talk about the other movies that maybe I didn't like, or maybe I'm just so-so about. In front of me is a tier list with every movie that I saw this year listed under it. We're going to go through, and I'm gonna give you quick thoughts on each movie that I saw and where it ranks in my 2021 movie tier list. So at the very start of the year, I watched a movie called Locked In, which really appealed to me because it was a heist movie from Doug Liman, and it took place in the quarantine and the current situations that we were all going through. And we hadn't seen a movie like that yet. The thing is that this was a boring period of time where everybody was inside, so naturally it created a boring movie. I'm gonna place it in the D tier. Barely made it through. Sad start. Unfortunately, it doesn't get a lot better. The next movie on here is The Little Things. Very disappointing, did not live up to the potential, and that is also going in the D tier. Next up, Malcolm and Marie. It starts as a really great movie, but it's another bottle film where there's only two characters for obvious reasons, and I'm gonna put Malcolm and Marie in the C tier. Chaos Walking. This movie was filmed in 2017. At one point, it had Charlie Kaufman, who is one of my all-time favorite screenwriters, attached to it, so it had a lot of potential. Unfortunately, I was wrong, and this movie is not very memorable. It's not bad, it's just okay. I'm gonna toss it in the C tier. Cherry. I think a lot of people had it out for this movie, mainly because the directors were no longer making Avengers films. I remember reading articles that said that the Russos were being pretentious by moving the camera, and I didn't feel that way at all. I think that that's, you know, how you make a movie. So all in all, it comes off as I liked it, but it was just okay. And I'm going to go ahead and put Cherry in my B tier. The Last Blockbuster. This was a cool little Sunday afternoon Netflix movie. I'm going to throw it in the B tier. Raya and the Last Dragon. I could not even stay awake through this movie. Now, if you want to talk about movies where I just don't get it, Zach Snyders Justice League. I know everybody loves this movie, and I'm not trying to stomp all over that. I don't see what all the fuss is about. Yes, it is better than Justice League, the theatrical cut, but that's one of the worst movies I've ever seen in a theater to begin with. Having a movie that is just coherent, and that's what makes it better, is not really a great improvement. It's actually what I would call the bare minimum. And the fact that it took Zack Snyder 4 hours to tell this thing is ridiculous. This could be still cut down a lot. There are moments of brilliance in it, for sure, but ultimately, I still don't like Zack Snyder's take on any of these characters, especially Batman. I'm gonna go ahead and throw Zack Snyder's Justice League in the C tier. Godzilla vs. Kong. I watched this in a private theater on my birthday. Thank you to my beautiful wife who supports me in everything that I do, including loving the big monkey. I love this guy. Also, they gave King Kong a beard. Godzilla vs. Kong goes in the A tier, sorry not sorry. It is better than Snyder Cut. Another fun little surprise at the movies was Nobody. I love Bob Odenkirk ever since Mr. Show. I didn't see him as a John Wick or a Keanu Reeves type. And my God, this is a fun movie to watch at the theaters. I'm gonna throw Nobody in the A tier, actually. I really liked it. Mortal Kombat. I watched this exactly where it needed to be, and that was HBO Max. I'm putting Mortal Kombat in the D column. The Friends reunion. Fight Me, this is a feature-length documentary about Friends. It is a movie. While I'm putting out controversial opinions, Friends is a great show. I don't understand the hate. Friends reunion, very solid, lot of fun. I'm gonna put it in the B tier. Now we get to one of my favorite titles of the entire year. Bo Burnham's Inside. This is a movie, and I know it was marketed as a comedy special and as a music album, and it is those things, but it's not just those things. This is one of the most heartfelt and sincere titles of the entire year, and I'm gonna place Bo Burnham's Inside as a solid S tier pick. One of the only ones of the year. Quiet Place 2. I do think if this movie comes out in a different year, it maybe doesn't impress the same way that it did this year. But I think a lot of people were really missing the feeling of watching a horror movie and being very tense in a movie theater and really caring about characters that you left the house to see. I'm going to say that Quiet Place Part 2 is another A-tier movie of 2021. Mainstream is one that I was really looking forward to. First of all, Andrew Garfield is one of, if not my favorite actor working today. And the trailer for this movie looked like a lot of fun. It looked like a take on Logan Paul and other influencers and showed that Andrew Garfield got to chew scenery in a big way, which is the best way to use him. And I will say Andrew Garfield is fantastic in this movie. It's not a fantastic movie. The editing here is so weird and it just barely holds together. I'm not even really sure what it was trying to say, and all in all, this came out to be a huge mess. But I still love you, Andrew Garfield. I'm gonna put mainstream in my D tier. If you're into aliens, my next pick is a must-watch. I heard about it on the Joe Rogan show, The Phenomenon, about real-life alien sightings. I'm going to place The Phenomenon in the B tier. Speaking of impressed, I wasn't when I saw Army of the Dead. I seriously don't know how this thing got a spin-off in the same year that it came out. I'm putting the Army of the Dead in the D tier. Cruella. This movie is so much fun. I really dug it a lot more than I thought I would, and I'm going to throw Cruella in the B tier. Next on the list, In the Heights. As you saw last year, I hate Hamilton. I don't get all the fuss. My issue with Hamilton was really that there wasn't a lot of spectacle to it. But In the Heights is the definition of a musical spectacle. This next movie has a very special place in my heart because I've been asking for it for so long. When they first announced F9, there was a rumor that they were going to go to space. And everybody kept saying that it was a joke, and I kept saying it wouldn't be that much of a stretch. I bet you they're gonna do it. They went to space, and they did it by driving in a car. And so I'm not gonna say that that's good entertainment, but I'm very glad that I was right. This movie also sees a weird trend start this year where there'll be a movie in a franchise that is completely consistent with all of the other movies in that franchise. And then the fans come out and say, why was it like that? And then you have to sit there and be like, well, they're all like that. In the Fast and Furious franchise, there's a movie where the bad guy is a robot. There's one where Paul Walker and Vin Diesel drive their car across the span of two skyscrapers mid-air like a ramp. And The Rock at one point flexes hard enough to get out of a full-body cast. So I don't know what you're talking about. They're all like that. I didn't like this movie, but I don't like any of these movies, and I can at least recognize that this is consistent. I'm throwing F9 in the C tier. Black Widow. I love Florence Pugh as Yelena. I love David Harbour as Red Guardian. It is by no means the terrible movie that everybody claims it is, and I'm actually gonna put it in my A tier. Do you remember the discourse around Space Jam 2, where everybody said, I can't believe they're doing this. It's just a way to show everybody what Warner Brothers owns. I don't want to see it. It doesn't have the integrity of the first Space Jam. And to that I ask you, what do you think the first Space Jam is? Space Jam was always a commercial for Warner Brothers properties. Do you think that putting Bugs Bunny with Michael Jordan was not a commercial? I'm putting that in the C tier. Old. This had a really cool trailer, and I know everybody wants M. Night Shyamalan to have a really cool comeback, but I have not forgiven him for Glass, and this did not help his case. I'm putting Old in the D tier. Jungle Cruise. Again, I love going to Disney World. I love the Jungle Cruise ride, and I think that that ride lent itself to a more unique film being made than what this movie is. Jungle Cruise is all about dry humor and silliness, and to me, when I think of dry humor and silliness, I think more of a Taika Waititi, Wes Anderson type. You could have even made it a musical. I don't think of The Rock. I'm putting that in the C tier. The Tomorrow War. Chris Pratt did nothing wrong. Please leave him alone. I'm gonna put the Tomorrow War in my B tier. James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. I love James Gunn. I think there are very few directors who still have the kind of flair that he has when he comes to a project, and I think he was just what was needed to make The Suicide Squad what it should have been from the beginning, and I'm putting it in the S tier. I really love this movie. Luca. I think that this movie has a lot to say. Unfortunately, I don't know what that was or what it was trying to say. Is it bad to say that I didn't get it? It comes off as just cute. I'm gonna put it in my B tier. Okay, Reminiscence. I remember walking out of Reminiscence and saying, oh, that reminded me of Inception. And kind of Interstellar and kind of Memento all at the same time. And then I went home and I looked up the movie, and it was written by Christopher Nolan's brother, so that actually makes a lot of sense. I don't remember a lot else about the movie, and that must say something. I'm gonna throw it in the C tier. Free Guy. I hate Ryan Reynolds so much. I'm gonna go ahead and throw Free Guy in the C tier. Stillwater. In the spirit of full disclosure, the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer came out the day that I was in the theater watching this movie, and I did get up to go watch it in the hallway, so maybe I'm not being totally fair to it. I'm gonna put Stillwater in the C tier. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. This came out and everybody was so excited about the great martial arts and the great performances that are in this movie and the exceptional cinematography. And I went and I liked all those things too, but I really hate the third act. It falls apart for me. At this point in time, I'm going to go ahead and throw it in the C tier. Although I really love that scaffolding fight. The Eyes of Tammy Faye. This is another in a string of great performances by Andrew Garfield this year. I love this movie. I know a lot of people didn't, and maybe that's because they saw the documentary that I have not seen. I understand that that goes into more detail. I'm gonna throw Eyes of Tammy Faye into my A tier. Dear Evan Hansen, more like Dear Evan Handsome. For a guy named Evan Handsome, he's pretty ugly, and I'm gonna throw that in the D tier, guys. It's going in the D. And while we're on the negative swing, let's talk about Venom: Let There Be Carnage. I already made a video about this movie, and I talked in depth about my disappointments with it. I'm gonna go ahead and throw Venom: Let There Be Carnage in the D tier. The Many Saints of Newark. This is a movie that I did not want them to make. I am a hardcore Sopranos fan. I think it is a little blasphemous to have a Tony Soprano character in your movie when James Gandolfini is not alive to play him. But I did enjoy this movie, actually. It's not a Tony Soprano starring movie. He is a guest star at best, and I just like the world of The Sopranos. I think this added a nice little twist to the lore of the show. I'm gonna go ahead and put Many Saints of Newark in the B tier, but only this one time, David Chase. Please don't make any more Sopranos stuff. I'm satisfied. It's okay. No Time to Die. I think this was a really satisfying ending to the Daniel Craig James Bond. It is my favorite of his Bond films. I'm putting No Time to Die in the A tier. Val. This is a really interesting experiment because it is the real-life actor Val Kilmer filming himself every day from his teenage years into his adulthood, and this is one of my favorite documentaries I've ever seen. I'm gonna go ahead and throw Val in the A tier. Halloween Kills is not a good movie. It is a funny one, and since Evil ends tonight, this movie gets a C. It's going in the C tier, guys. Dune, a tremendous sci-fi epic that's going to have some great sequels, and eventually when all three, I'm assuming, Dunes get made, this is going to be really fun to watch, kind of like the Lord of the Rings trilogy. However, the theater that I saw it in, it was so hot and it was so late at night, and I fell asleep a little, and I still have not gotten around to watching it again. No fault of the movie. I'm gonna go ahead and put Dune in my A tier. The Last Duel is a movie that I liked a lot when I was watching it. My opinion of it has been lowered a little bit, largely in part to Ridley Scott's comments about how it only failed because my generation is not smart enough to want to see it. I'm in my generation and I saw it. I don't think it's a very appealing movie, and I don't think it was for everyone. That's not really the movie's fault, but it is okay at best, and I'm gonna put it in the B tier. Last Night in Soho comes from one of my other favorite directors, Edgar Wright. It is one of the most artistically inspiring movies that I saw all year, and it's going in the S tier. Just so great. The French Dispatch. I love Wes Anderson. I really like his style of filmmaking, and I just find it soothing. Unfortunately, that is all that French Dispatch has to offer. There's not much here in the way of story. It's just Wes Anderson's style on display. I, however, happen to like that, so I'm gonna put it in the B tier. And I'll be honest, I don't know if this next one counts. It might just be a TV special, but I watched it and I liked it. Muppet Haunted Mansion. This will really only appeal to you if you are a Muppet fan or a Haunted Mansion fan. And I'm a fan of both of those things, so I'm putting it in the B tier. The Eternals. Some are saying it is Marvel's worst film, and I guess I understand why. But I also thought it was kinda cool. I overall think it's an unbalanced movie, but a fun one, and I'm gonna throw it in my B tier. Ghostbusters Afterlife. I'll be honest with you, I'm not a huge Ghostbusters fan. I like the first one a lot, but in my opinion, they haven't made another Ghostbusters movie that was good. However, this thing, as I was watching it, did win me over with its dry humor, and so I'm gonna throw it in the B tier. Tick, Tick, Boom. This is not only one of the best movies of the year, but it's one of the best performances of Andrew Garfield's entire career. I am going to throw Tick, Tick, Boom in my S tier. I had to think about it. House of Gucci. I don't know why everybody seems to hate this thing so much. I'm gonna put House of Gucci in the A tier. Love Hard. I don't know why I watched this. I'm throwing it in the D tier. Encanto, a little short, so I'm gonna throw it in my B tier. I've talked at length about this thing. Spider-Man No Way Home. You can watch my last video to get all of my opinions, but this, as a lifelong Spider-Man fan, just felt like getting a really big hug. I didn't want this thing to end. I loved every second of it, and I'm putting Spider-Man No Way Home in the S tier. Nightmare Alley. Maybe the problem is that I guessed where this was going to go in the first 20 minutes, and so 2 hours later, when it goes exactly where I thought, what took you so long? I'm unfortunately going to throw Nightmare Alley in the C tier. West Side Story. Steven Spielberg is obviously one of the most talented filmmakers of our generation. I'm not breaking any new ground when I say that. Of course West Side Story is great. I really liked West Side Story. I'm throwing it in my A tier. Okay, don't look up. I wanted to love this movie. This trailer looked like I would love it. He comes on with a message that I absolutely agree with. And then he feels the need to tell me the message for 2 hours with no evolution on what he's saying. I'm actually gonna go ahead and throw Don't Look Up in my C tier. All right, Matrix Resurrections. If you're pretending that you like this movie, I'm so sorry. But the fact remains there has never been a good Matrix sequel. I'm throwing Matrix Resurrections in the D tier. One Night in Miami. It's a really, really strong and impactful movie that deals with some topics that I'm maybe not qualified to talk about. I'm gonna throw One Night in Miami in the A tier. Being the Ricardos. Social Network is one of my favorite movies, and I also love I Love Lucy. Who doesn't? I'm gonna go ahead and throw Being the Ricardos in the A tier. And last but not least, Licorice Pizza. I don't know how I feel about this movie. It is a very strongly directed movie with a lot of things that I like. And I'm not usually one to call things problematic. I just recognize that the end of this movie made me feel very uncomfortable. That being said, there's a scene in this movie with a truck. And it is the most tense and best directed scene in any movie all year, 100%. So a real mixed bag, and I'm going to throw Licorice Pizza in the B tier. That is every movie of 2021 placed into a tier list. I thought that this would be fun just to get some opinions out there before my top 5 list this year, not a top 10. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Oliver Ricketts. Hey, go to the movies.